Hey, you crazy cats. Welcome to Leaving CrazyTown, where we navigate the roller coaster of relationships, mental health, and personal transformation with humor as our trusty seatbelt.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and with my buddy Finn, we're here to share our real stories, expert insights, practical tips to help you break free from codependency, reclaim your life, and find freedom.
So whether you're wrestling with boundary issues, craving connections that won't ghost you, or just here for a front row seat to the wild ride of self-discovery, you've come to the right place.
So buckle up. We're leaving CrazyTown. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Leaving CrazyTown. We are welcoming Jason from the Sober Not Subtle platform. I was like, is it a podcast too?
It's whatever you want it to be.
It's what?
But not a podcast yet. No, I'm relying on you for that.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure. So welcome to Leaving CrazyTown. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
I know Jason from Sober Curator online magazine, and we met in some of the team meetings, and he's a delightful human being, has a great story. So I thought I'd have him on and find out about his upcoming book and a little bit about his stories. I don't know. I thought I'd start with just tell us a little about your recovery journey, when you got sober. I mean, I've read your book, by the way.
Okay, good.
Which was great. And I love your writing, which I'll comment on. But start wherever you want, just kind of to tell most people are in recovery of some kind.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give the short version because I want people to buy the book. But
of course.
I'm just kidding. So I got sober in 2010. I was 39. And, I always say that my mental health has a drinking problem. So a lot of it really stems from mental health and some childhood trauma, which I'm sure we'll get into. But it wasn't something that I recognized as an adult that there was any trauma. It was like I was just a Gen Xer and just kind of like, it's fine. My parents got divorced, whatever. My world was turned upside down. I'm good. I noticed all the patterns in my life, and it all is tied back to that with relationships. And, not everybody that has mental health concerns is an alcoholic, but I haven't met many alcoholics that don't have some sort of mental health concerns.
Yes.
And if you have both, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, substance use disorder, then it could be pretty deadly. Like you hit the jackpot, right? Yeah, parents got divorced when I was young, and I just kind of shut down. That's the long and the short of it. And every relationship, every job I ever had, everything that I ever did, it was always imposter syndrome. It was always self-sabotage, and I was always chasing numb, because I wanted people to I wanted to be the person that, I wanted people to think that I was.
Yes.
And I was never my authentic self. And I was a nice guy. I was very kind. I was all this stuff. But, I didn't want anybody to see me for who I was, because I didn't want them to think I was broken and unfixable. It just, I have 2 daughters and a wife that we've been together for more than 30 years. And they were 7 and 3 when I got sober. And one's a second grade teacher now, and the other one's a sophomore in college. So my bottom, it was very emotional, emotional bottom. And it just wound up getting to the point where I just wanted to kill myself. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, because I just didn't think that there were any answers. I tried all the self-help books. I tried therapy. I tried exercising. And I just would look in the mirror and say, what's wrong with you? You have everything. Why can't you just do this? Yes. And it would get better for a second if I bought a new car. It would get better for a second if I went on vacation. It would get better in a second if I bought a pack of baseball cards. And then it would just be just me again. And I found a recovery program, a 12-step program. And it was the only thing that has ever worked in my entire life. And I'm not going to say it's because of steps or God or any of this stuff. I think everybody has their own journey. But for me, at the heart of it, it was about identification and connection, because I was finally able to look around and say, oh my God, I'm not the only one that feels this way. And it was, my shoulders fell down. It was such a relief to know that maybe this would work. And there's a lot of healing, and, relationship is basically, even though we were married for 15 years or whatever it was, we were starting from scratch, because I'm a new person. And she has to deal with being, a new role. And me, not everybody gets a chance to start over. And there's that expression, if you knew then what you know now, how would you do it? And in recovery, we get to do that. Like we really do. So, I'm blessed, and nothing's perfect. I'm on meds from, I still have mental health concerns. I still go through bouts of stuff. And my old sponsor used to say, it's okay to get in a rut, just don't decorate it. And sometimes I'll make the trip to Home Goods, but like I say, I keep the receipts now.
You said so many great things. I mean, I totally identified with so much you said. I have so many questions. And it's funny because one of my last questions was around your marriage.
Mhm.
Because so often couples come in to see me, or somebody comes in to see me, and very often within the first year, they're like, I don't even know this person. My wife is pissed off at me all the time. I don't even like her anymore. I don't even know her. And a lot of relationships don't survive. So,
No.
how did you navigate that, getting to know one another again? And she must be a wonderful human.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I love you, and you're like my hero. You are like the coolest person. Like, you've always been so cool. Like, you're cool in those writers' meetings. Everybody seems to like gravitate towards you. So I was very excited to come on this podcast just to
my
get to know you a little bit more. You know what I
Me
mean?
too, you.
Yeah. So I'm
Absolutely.
happy that
Yes.
I'm here right now. So how do we navigate it? Patience, probably more patience from my wife, than on my side. She has always been the most supportive person in my recovery. I don't know if it's because, she lived through it all. So she really wanted me to get better for my sake and for her sake.
Right.
And she's just always been really, really supportive of me. And listen, the expression goes, we're not bad people getting good, we're sick people getting well. Right.
Mhm.
So I've always been a good person. I think I wasn't like this evil person. I was just very sick. And, you don't really just break habits, and, you don't change behaviors overnight. So she was just willing to sort of like stick with me. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm sure she wanted to, beat the hell out of me. She's just, she knows that, especially early on, like, you need to go to a
Yes.
meeting. Oh, I
Yes.
know. Thank you. We started to read each other a little different. Like, she knows if I'm in a mood, she knows she,
Yep.
needs to give me some space. We communicate
Yes.
certainly more than we used to, which was zero. And,
Right.
listen, when you're not drinking and taking drugs, like, there's an even playing field. So
Yes.
I was already, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, 4 strikes, 5, like, when I came home, because I just wasn't, she never knew who was going to walk in the door. Yeah, very supportive. And I'm like a responsible human now.
Yes.
She doesn't have to worry about me if I'm going to kill someone driving home, if I'm going to
Right.
kill myself, if I'm going to come home, who am I with? Like, I
Yes.
took away so much emotional security from my family. I always
Yes.
say, like, I never hit my wife. I always put food on the table. Like, we were, good co-parents, but the emotional security that I stole from my family, and I didn't think I was hurting anybody. I'm hurting myself. But, when I found recovery and dove in, I'm like, wow,
Yes.
what an asshole you were, But yeah,
We don't
my wife is the best. I mean, she's the hero of the book. Like, if you want to talk about like characters, she's certainly the hero of the book for sure.
Yes. Yes. That
Yeah.
when you met, and I kept thinking, is she going to be the person he married? Like, I didn't know at first. And then what a great story that you guys have
Yeah.
been together for. And relationship. I mean, I was just on the phone with my sweetheart before I got on this thing, and we were kind of having this tense conversation. And I thought, like, relationships are not easy no matter how long you've been sober. And I think I'm a good communicator. And what I realized is in this conversation is I get wishy-washy when I have to express a need. And he even said to me, why didn't you just say it really clearly like that? And I thought to myself, right, I kind of say, well, and I wrote a book on codependency. And I always say my next book is going to be, I wrote a book on codependency and I'm still codependent,
Yeah.
because it is this identifying what you want and need and then communicating it clearly. But
Yeah.
what happens is I start doubting, like the doubt comes in, I express a need. And then I'm like, what does he want? What does he need? I don't know. It's just really navigating it is so amazing. And like that you've done it for this long is really impressive to me. I mean, the longest relationship I've ever been in is 6 years.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's been it for me. And it really impresses me when people hang in there, do the work, have patience around it, and not get frustrated and kind of just keep doing it. It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's also about expectations. I mean,
yes,
we're not penguins, right? Like not everybody mates for life, and it's not like
right.
I don't know. It's not what I believe or not believe, but I find it hard to believe that people were put on this earth to be with each other every single day. Like it's just
Yes.
you find the right person and you make it work.
Yes.
And I always was looking for something that was perfect. And
Yes.
every time that it wasn't, I had resentments. So I think with marriage, if you can just settle into the fact that it's never going to be perfect,
Yes.
and you get what you need, and sometimes you leave the rest. And that's why you have friends and you have family. Like you don't have to be everything to a partner or a
Right.
spouse, and they don't have to be everything to you, but
Right.
you have to be able to sort of like get along. And
Yeah.
again, good times, bad times, but relationships are hard.
Yeah.
Like,
And parenting. I mean, parenting and sobriety is huge to me. I mean, I have very strong opinions about that,
yeah,
doing it well. And, my experience with clients for years, especially people that got sober, was they just overcompensated so much and became super controlling and
right.
intrusive and didn't let their kids just grow and develop. And yeah, so I know parenting is hard, especially when people get sober and then they have all this guilt and then they want to overcompensate and
Hmm.
it's messy.
Can I just tell you a funny story?
Like,
When we got married, when people used to actually have the big videotape thing,
yes.
so, when the videographer goes to every table and like talks to everybody and you say something to the camera. So my dad and my stepmom, they were talking to the camera and they're just like, huddled in together. And my dad goes, son, marriage is about the 3 C's: commitment, compromise, compassion. And my stepmom goes, it's not compassion. And he goes, it's compassion. She goes, it's not compassion. That's not the 3 C's. And they started arguing back and forth for like 3 or 4 minutes on the tape. They're fighting about what the third C is. And I was just like,
Classic.
what is going on? So, but that's like a perfect example of marriage, like, and they made up obviously, but it's just hilarious.
Right.
That's the way it is. But anyway.
Right. Well, let's go back to the beginning for a second because I think what you said early on to me is so important. Like when I was reading your book and you talked about the divorce, and everybody's got different opinions about the impact of divorce, but I think there are so many variables. There's the person, there's the different parents, there's, does the person have other supports? There's what age you were. I mean, there's so many different pieces.
Yeah.
And I think it was so helpful for you to categorize it as a trauma
Yes.
and talk about it as having such an enormous impact, because I think people minimize it. And I think it would be really helpful to people who watch this video to hear
Mhm.
about it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I thought because that seemed to be one of the most significant events in your
Yeah.
early childhood, besides a bunch of other stuff. But yeah.
Yes. So for me, I'm a recovery coach. I think a lot of us that I've met at the Sober Curator, we're recovery coaches, a peer or whatever you want to call it. And taking that training really changed the way I look at recovery and opened my eyes about a lot of things. And it also helped me understand what trauma really is, because I think that the average person, if you mention trauma, you would associate that with, a veteran coming home with his legs blown off, or a domestic violence, or someone that lost a loved one to a really, really, a terminal illness. It's always seems like it's the worst of the worst stuff. So I don't think people associate these little events, or continuous events that might not seem as grand, with trauma. And, for me, I never did associate the divorce with trauma. But what turned around for me is when I was taking the training, we were learning about the ACEs test, right? And I think with this adverse child experiences, I think it's called.
Experiences, right?
Yeah, and it's about, it's like 10 questions, and it didn't start out as a test for that. I think it started out for like weight loss or something like that. That's why
Got it.
but it turned into this childhood trauma test.
Yes.
And one of the things that is listed as a trauma is a broken home, divorced parents.
Yes.
And I was like, because when I took the test, because they made us take the test, I thought I was going to get like 0 out of 10, but I wound up getting like a 4 or a 5 out of 10. And I remember taking the test and starting to cry. I muted my microphone and I had to step away for a second because it was just such a realization that, I wasn't giving myself grace,
Yes.
enough grace, and acknowledging that, maybe all those things that I went through had something to do. And you know what, when you're 8 years old and your parents split up and everything that you trusted, every reason why you felt safe as a
Yes.
child is turned upside down,
Yes.
is like, that's my behavior became that. And
Yes.
that's all I knew. And so all the tools that I had, like, I didn't have the emotional intelligence, growing up to deal with those feelings. And I didn't talk to my mom. I certainly didn't talk to my dad. And I just made pretend everything was okay. And, so as an event in my life, and, people, like, I hear people say, get over it. It happened 40 years ago. And I'm like, you know what? Trauma, I heard somebody describe this once with trauma. Okay. And this is why you have to be really, really aware of people that might have trauma when you're, especially in the behavioral health field, right?
Mm.
So trauma is, let's say I'm sitting here in my studio, right? And out of nowhere, a bear breaks through the door and starts to attack me. Okay. Like my fight or flight would kick in, and that would completely traumatize me. Right.
Mm.
But a person that is living with trauma, the bear is always following them. That's what I heard. And I'm like, oh my God, I always have to be careful about people that walk into the recovery center I work in, or people that I meet out on the street, and be sensitive that they might be living with something. So, and just like grief doesn't go away. Trauma doesn't go away. You just hopefully learn to live around it, and that's what I'm trying to do now. Now that I'm aware of it,
Right.
I'm living around it. And writing this book was like, everybody's like, wasn't that therapeutic or cathartic? I'm like, no, it was horrible.
It was so painful. Oh,
It was painful. It was
Yes.
so horrible. But I have such a better understanding of who I am and why I am that person, and have
Mhm.
had such good conversations with my mom and my dad and my brother about stuff that I never would have remembered unless I was writing. So, but the trauma thing, yeah, I mean, give yourself a break if you're out there and you can't figure out why your life is the way it is. Like, really think about it, and maybe write about it. But
Well, and
it's a thing.
yeah, and I mean, there's so much more out there now about it. I mean, Gabor Mate with the myth and normal. I mean, and Peter Levine with all his work with somatic experience. I mean, so much is out there now about it's really many more smaller events over
Mhm.
a long extended time, rather than these huge significant events like in the 60s when PTSD originally was developed and all that stuff. So, I mean, I think there's a lot more awareness, thank God. And it's also how, I remember a professor of mine at graduate school said, and I'm not going to exactly get this right, but it's like, it doesn't even matter if something really happened or not. It's how we interpreted it and how it affected us. Because we were talking about like how different kids interpret different events. None of it even matters. It's
Oh God.
really, and that's the same with trauma. I think Gabor Mate's definition, it's like, it's not something that's happening out there. It's something that's happening inside of our body and what we're
Mhm.
carrying.
Yep.
It's our response to the environment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Perception is the key. Like my disease of substance use disorder or whatever it is the disease of perception, right?
Yes.
And that switch can flip depending on how I feel or what I'm doing. But, I mean, man, how you see it, that is the whole thing with the book. And I think I even say it in the preface, and even, in the note, in the beginning, like,
Yes.
characters are based on blah, 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 blah. This is not necessarily exactly how it might have happened,
Right.
You know, events might be mixed up and characters are composites, but it's how I saw it.
That's
And,
right.
you know, when I was writing the book, I thought I was finished. And I had this finished manuscript, and I was, you know, something was bothering me, and I really didn't know what it was. And I was sitting in my upstate, and we have a cabin upstate where I love to write. And I was like, man, I have like written so much about my mom, you know, my wife, my family, you know, the grind culture with my jobs, all this stuff. But I have just vilified my dad, right? Like I took all the stuff that was bad and all the things he did to affect me or that situation. And that's kind of where it was.
Yep.
And I was like, you know, I don't want him to look like a villain because he's not. So I went back and I wrote a chapter about my dad and going to see him when I was young every other weekend and just all the good. And I didn't remember a lot of what I wrote about in that chapter until I started thinking about that. You know, baseball catches and, you know, watching
Yes.
like Pancake Breakfast and Neil Diamond. This is a tribute to my dad here. But but again, it's the way I saw it.
Yes.
And, you know, so when I talked to my dad and I talked to my mom, you know, bracing them for the book, I just said once, and I did this with my men's too. I just said to them, I do not hold anything against either of you. Like that's been long forgiven. You know, I was a kid and I don't know what was going on with you guys. You did the best you could with what you had at the time, but I just want you to know that the way this book is written, it's how I saw it when I was
Yes.
a kid. It's not how I feel now at all. So it by you saying that about like perception, it's like, oh God, like that's exactly what I'm trying to say, you
Yes.
know? And it's
Yes.
important too, because
Yes.
people see things different ways. And that's the difference between trauma and no trauma, perhaps, you know?
Well, and are affected. Like I remember, and I always give this example, this client of mine who had this whole belief about his mother not loving him. Like, I mean, it's very common when we look at our fears and the steps, right? Fear of not being loved or not being wanted or not being good enough or whatever. But he told this story about how when he was like in first grade and his mom had other kids and was super busy, and he came home from elementary school and he had this beautiful drawing, and she was at the stove, I think, like baking or getting dinner prepared or whatever. And he was super excited. And he said, Mom, you know, I drew this, you know, and he wanted to show it to her. And she literally just turned and just dismissed him.
Hmm.
Like, you know, because in her world, she's preparing dinner, she's got other kids. Like, it's not about him at all, but that one experience
Yeah.
created a belief that he lived with for years. And
Yeah.
you think about the power of one experience or one interaction that our parents say or do, because they're our primary caretakers. And we do the best we can, but we only know how to interpret it in our self centered world. We don't think at 5 years old, oh, my mother's really busy at the stove right now. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't have that kind of awareness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why the whole idea of holding on to our belief systems loosely and knowing that our thoughts are just our thoughts, and identifying those beliefs is such a huge part of step work, you know, because we made them up. I mean, all of the stuff that we perceive, we make up. And
Yeah.
then the problem is we live out of those beliefs. We don't even know we're living out of them.
Yeah.
So that's such a big piece of work to do.
Yeah.
And
It's,
going,
it's, it's really scary. Like maybe 2.5 years ago, almost maybe 2 years ago, I had just started when I switched careers, and I just started doing the coaching, and you know I was doing all this other stuff, and you know I was the first 6 months of doing it. There was a lot of counter transference, and I wasn't
yes.
really understanding. Even though I learned about it, I
Yeah.
wasn't understanding that I was absorbing a lot of other people's stuff,
Yeah.
and it was picking a lot of scabs. But you know, I just didn't understand it, and about 6 months in, I was starting to have like little mini panic attacks. And I'd be driving and I'd start hysterically crying in
Mm.
my car out of nowhere. And or I'd be at home and I'd start hysterical cry. And I'm not a crier. Like I tear
Mm.
up a lot because I'm very emotional now that I'm in recovery, but I don't like I'm talking full on
Right.
snot like And like, I had to call my friend once. I was like, she was like, what is wrong? I'm like, I can't, she's like, calm down. And I couldn't understand why it was happening to me. And then I went to the gym one morning and I was working out, and all of a sudden I started to not feel right, like really not right. And I left the gym and I was driving home. And by the time I got home, I was manic. And, I'm not bipolar. I don't have manic episodes. I've been depressed. I've been all this stuff, but
Right.
and panic attacks, but this was very different. And like, I was talking to the coffee machine. I couldn't, my brain was going so fast that my mouth couldn't keep up. And,
Yes.
I was scared. Like, I was very scared because my mind at that moment felt so fragile that I thought I was going to literally lose my mind. And my wife
Yes.
was home, and I went up to her. I said, just so you know, I just need you to know, I don't want to hurt myself. I don't want to hurt anybody else, but I think I'm losing my mind right now.
Yeah.
And I was that I almost checked myself into, a mental health facility. I almost checked myself into a psych ward, and I had the intake done and everything. And thank God I had this amazing social worker that works with us at my job. And I was talking to her every day because my supervisor was like, oh my God, the same thing happened to me. You have to just stay home, take as long as you need. Like, we're here for you. And every day she's like, why don't you hold off on going? How do you feel today? Better than yesterday? I was like, yeah, I feel a little bit better. She's like, let's talk tomorrow. And I was like, I feel better. And because I don't know if that would have been the answer for me, but I just needed to feel safe.
Right.
And this is 13 years sober.
Yeah.
On medication. And so just the brain, it's for people like me that have mental health concerns, have always lived with it, and the substance, it can be scary because if you get up all in your head, like,
Right.
it doesn't stop sometimes. And that was scary.
Did you gain any insight about, and just for people that are watching, countertransference is what happens when you're a counselor and someone is sharing information and our own stuff gets activated. So our own history, our own issues, our own mental health stuff. And a big part of being a therapist is being aware of what are your activations, what types of clients trigger that stuff. But sometimes we're unaware. So that's really what Jason is talking about. And I'm just curious, like, looking back at when it happened, did you gain any insight about what was it that the client was sharing, or what got activated in you, or anything about that?
I don't think it was I hate the word triggered, to be honest. I don't know why. I
Yeah.
just don't. It
I
sounds like a
use
very negative
activation.
thing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Activation. I've never heard that. I like that much
Yeah.
better. But I don't think that there was anything specific that I was hearing that
Got
people
it.
were talking to me about. I think it was just the pressure and the anxiety because I take on a lot. I create my
Yes.
own stress sometimes, and I don't know how to say no a lot of the times, and I don't know what self-care is. Like, I
Yes.
know now, but I wasn't really, I didn't have a self-care routine, and I didn't have boundaries. I just wanted to help the world. I
Yes.
switched careers. I want to save the world. I want to help everybody. I never want to say no. And that's what was happening. And I
Yes.
pulled the
Overwhelmed.
threads, I was
Yes.
overwhelmed. But, I will say one thing. And, I don't really meditate very much. Like, I will sometimes, and I love music. So like that calms me down. But and this is a 12-step thing, like the attitude about just like, you can help others with your lived experience. I always say can I curse on here? I can curse, right?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. I always say the most fucked up shit that you go through becomes your greatest assets in recovery.
Yes.
So at that moment, I was going out of my mind, and I had talked to my psychiatrist, and he said, I was in the bathroom and I was just like pacing back and forth. He said, take a Benadryl. I said, I can't take a Benadryl. I used to snort Benadryl like that. I can't do. He's like, okay. He's like, I'm going to prescribe some lithium for you. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. But in the meantime, I looked at my watch, and there was an AA meeting about half a block away. So I put my headphones on and I cranked up my favorite band just on shuffle. And I just cranked it up, and I walked into the meeting, and I walked right up to the chairperson, and I said, no disrespect. I just need you to know that I'm not well right now, and I'm going to be sitting in the back with my headphones on. I just need to feel safe. And by the end of the meeting, I felt a little bit better. But the whole time that my brain was on fire, I kept saying to myself, I've never been through this before. I've heard people talk about manic episodes. But I've never been through it. I can now take this and remember what it was like and hopefully help somebody else, because I know what it feels like. And I kept repeating that to myself over and over, like, there's a purpose, there's a purpose, you know, you're
Yes.
gonna, and that was such an amazing, like, unselfish thought to have in my head. And it helped me
Yes.
to realize that maybe this is happening for a reason, but I wouldn't have thought that way unless I was in recovery,
Yes.
because I know that's what it's all about. So, but I did have to say that, because as bad as it felt and as scary as it was, I did keep telling myself that I'm going to be able to help somebody, you
Yes.
know, and that was a blessing, really, to think
Yes.
that way.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts about it. It's when you talk about your own mental health stuff, just so because this might be helpful to people too. How far into sobriety did you say to yourself, oh, geez, I might have a depression? Or did you realize it right away? I mean, in the old days, when I got sober a zillion years ago, they used to wait a year after you got out of treatment before they would recognize if, someone had a depression or something. And now, I mean, from my colleagues, they tell me they put people on meds right away because it supposedly the research says that you can stay sober longer if you're on something right away. And then if you don't need it eventually, then you can go off of it. But that it helps initially. So was that something you knew about initially or happened later on?
I went on meds. I went on a mood stabilizer. Like, I wasn't diagnosed with depression or bipolar or anything, but the psychiatrist thought that I needed like a mood stabilizer, like
Okay.
Lamictal, I think it was. And that happened 2 weeks after I got sober.
Got
And I felt like automatically felt better.
got it.
But so I'm always like, was it the meetings? Was it the Lamictal? Like, and I'm like, I don't care,
Who
you
cares?
know,
Who
but,
cares?
but the mental health component of it, I had known my entire life that something was wrong. And I knew from probably college until the day I got sober that I lived with depression and I lived with anxiety. And
Got it.
I just was too ashamed to talk about it. And I knew that people in my family took medicine for depression. I knew that it ran in the family, but I just never, ever thought that that was something that I could do, because I had so much pride, you know, and it was so much shame that I probably could have gotten well years and years and years and saved myself a lot of pain if I would have just asked for help,
Got it.
which was the main issue. Like, especially for men, like, we lose so many good men, you know, because they kill themselves because they're
Yes.
so ashamed to talk about the stuff that's on their mind. And it's horrifying. It's one of the reasons why I sucked it up and, like, told the truth in the book, because I don't
Yes.
want to lose anyone else. I've lost plenty of people. I've been to plenty of funerals in the 15 years that I've been sober, and it's
Yep.
horrible. But yeah, I knew right away, like, that, if anything, I thought that was the main problem,
Right.
you know?
Right. Well, and depression can manifest in different ways with men too. I
Hmm.
mean, so the presentation can be a bunch of symptoms that someone else might have a variety of other symptoms. So
Yeah.
I think it's so important. In fact, it's so great to be talking to you about this topic because I
Yeah.
think it is this kind of invisible, not talked about, shameful piece for some men. And it's a good thing that you're talking about it
Yeah.
because meds can really help people. And I think where I got stuck early in my career is that a lot of people at the counseling center where I worked, their belief was you have to take care of the mental health first before the addiction. And a lot of times my experience was you couldn't really get to the mental health if they're still partying and so
Yeah.
um the addiction piece is so important to put down also. I mean, who knows what came first,
Yeah.
but people will often say, "Oh, I was just medicating with my substance abuse," and they don't take the substance abuse seriously, and it can kill us. So,
Yeah.
both are important.
Human connection is, it's so unnatural for me to sit with somebody and talk freely about emotions. It's just an unnatural feeling for me. And it's become more natural, but it doesn't feel right. Like, I'm not supposed to do it. And a few weeks ago, a friend of mine was leading a meditation for one of the groups that we run, and it was outside and it was beautiful. and we were doing these 10-minute, then 20-minute meditations. And the last 10 minutes, he said, we're going to try something different. And I was like, okay, there's like 8, 10 of us there. He said, I want everybody to turn to the person next to you, find a partner. And I want you to sit right next to each other and turn towards each other. And we're going to look into each other's eyes for the next 10 minutes and not break gaze. And I was like, the guy next to me, I run a dad meeting every Tuesday, a dad's recovery meeting, and he's in it every week. So I know him pretty well. So I was like, okay, thank God, because at least I know him. But for the first 3 minutes, we were trying not to crack up. And I was even trying to like squint a little bit so he would look blurry, like, because I wanted, but it was the most unnatural feeling I've ever had. It was awful to have
10
to
minutes
look.
is a long time to do that. Yeah.
1 minute is a very long time.
Yeah. They say,
So just that connection, the idea of connecting and the idea of talking about your feelings is not something that's culturally accepted. It's not something we do. But being in my recovery, and I say this a lot in the dad group or any of the groups that I'm leading, I take a meeting into the jail every other week, the local jail. And when I talk to the guys, a lot of the times I stop and I say, guys, I just want you to know that what we're doing right now as 30, 40 men talking honestly about how we feel is not normal out there.
right.
Okay. And I always stop to think, like, I am so lucky that I found recovery. I'm so lucky that I have substance use disorder. I'm so lucky that I live with depression and anxiety, because if I didn't and I never got the help, I would never have the opportunity to have these privileged conversations with people that I talk to. But again, it doesn't feel natural. But if people would just
you're so
do
good
it,
at it.
well,
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm getting okay at it.
Right.
But it's hard. It's hard.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah.
And I'm trying to think of the guy's name. I don't know if you read that book, maybe 5 years. The guy that traveled around the world, he had depression, really bad depression, and he traveled around the world interviewing people in different countries. And his whole theory was connection is the answer. And people that are isolated, like the depression just gets worse and worse. And the minute people can connect and be validated and seen, the depression starts to lift. It's a brilliant book. But yes, and addiction. I mean, our friend Amy talks about, connection being the opposite of addiction, I think is her byline.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. There's that identification, knowing that you're not alone. If you can connect with people that have had similar feelings and experiences, and you just know that you're not unique, then that's like, because people walk around and think, nobody's going to understand my problems, or they don't, if only they had my job, they would understand. If only they had my relationship, they would get it, and it's like, hey, some people do. Like, you're not the only one that's going through it. Like, just talk about it. And, so like I said, it's, you put God, you put steps, you put all these things that I've done and all these things that are part of my life now. But if I hadn't walked into that first meeting and felt that wave of comfort, like, just wash over me, because I just had just a feeling that I was in the right place. Like, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd probably be dead, like it was because of connection. That's that human connection that I had never felt before. So,
and there's just such a feeling around feeling like everybody gets it. Whenever I'm sitting in a meeting, it's like, oh, these are my people. I mean, it's just everyone gets it. I mean, we don't have to explain what incomprehensible demoralization is. We've all been there, and we can all have compassion for each other because we know the darkness. I mean,
you want to hear something cool?
Go ahead.
So really quick. So the other day, Tuesday, I woke up. I was working a little late because it's my dad meetings at night. So I work late on Tuesdays. And I woke up, I went to my 10 o'clock home group meeting, my 12-step meeting, and which I always feel better when I leave. And then that night at 6, I had my dad's recovery group, which is not a 12-step meeting. It's just guys in recovery. And it could be disordered eating. It could be, mental health. It doesn't matter. It's just dads in recovery. And had that, and I walked out. And then at 8:30 that night, I attended, I don't know, have you heard of Swift Steps?
No.
Julianne Griffin, I think is her name. She started a group called Swift Steps, and it's basically Taylor Swift fans, the podcast, I think, with
That's
Elise.
right. Swift, like
Yeah.
Taylor Swift. I don't know one Taylor Swift song, so
Okay.
I'm out of it. Okay.
Well, so I had her, she wrote an article for Sober Not Subtle, which was awesome.
Got it. Okay.
And then she asked me to come and speak at one of the meetings. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and I loved it. So she happened to be celebrating 9 years the other night. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into there. So I had my 12-step meeting, I had my dad meeting, and I had a Swift Steps meeting. And my cup was so full.
Oh.
And I was like, there was no difference in any of the meetings. You know, like maybe we do things differently, different programs, different this, but the one thing that was the same was connecting with the people.
Yes.
And I could have gone to any of those meetings and it would have been fine. And it was just, you know, and again, it's like we found our community. It's amazing.
That sounds so cool. Can you give, what do you think would be what are two of your top most helpful tools in recovery? Obviously connection. Anything specific that really has helped you in your journey that might help other people? That I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but
no,
anything in particular?
I think, you know, like I said, I had a hard time with self-care at first and boundaries, but, you know, I'd say that boundaries are very important just in life in general, because boundaries doesn't mean that you can't connect with people. And boundaries don't mean that you have to be mean to somebody or always say no, but you have to know your limitations, and you have to, like, again, give yourself grace to sort of accept what you can and can't do. So it's been a long road for me, but I've learned to have boundaries, like, you know, no is a full sentence, as they say. You know, my favorite expression is, I would love to, but I can't.
Yes.
Right. So boundaries have been huge for me. And, you know, I would probably say, oh man, I don't know. I mean, boundaries are a big thing, and
self-care is another one, though. That is really critical too. And I'm going to send you a copy of my book, because I have a chapter on boundaries, and the number one tool for healing from codependency is self-care. Because by the time people start looking, like when you talk about the moment you thought you were losing your mind because you wanted to save everybody else, to me, that was like a codependency bottom.
Yeah.
Because when all our energies are going out and not enough is coming in, it's really not healthy. So the self-care and taking care of ourselves and putting ourselves first and all that stuff is so critical too. And you did mention that as well.
You know, I would also say, and we're talking like Maslow's hierarchy or whatever, but, you know, purpose is a big thing to me, and make sure that, you know, you're doing things that you feel fulfilled doing. And whether it's work, which was a big part of, you know, a big piece to my puzzle, but also, like, you know, if you write, like, have your tools that, you know, fill your own creative bucket, because, you know, you can feel a sense of accomplishment or something that you can do away from your work, away from other people, that makes you feel like you're creative, you can accomplish, whether it's painting rocks or writing poems, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, to me, that is a huge part of who I am today. I always make sure that I can do stuff separate from my work and from my family, because if not, like, I feel like I'm living my life for everybody else. And, you know, so that was my second one, a combo.
That is huge. That is huge. My buddy from my Leaving CrazyTown channel, he started piano in the last year. And it was something that he was kind of shamed about as a kid. Oh, you're not musical and all this stuff. And it has brought him, I can't even tell you the amount of joy he experiences it from, experiences from it. Okay, so tell people where they can find you. Also, tell them the title of your book, where they can get your book, etc.
Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to throw guilt on you right now, okay? Because you can't, hopefully you won't edit this out, but so I have a website that's called Sober Not Subtle, okay? SoberNotSubtle.com. And it's basically a platform that helps amplify people's voices in recovery. And that could be anything. You know, like I said, we've had people write about disordered eating. We had tons of people writing about mental health, depression, anxiety. We have people writing about substance use disorder. We've had social workers write, psychiatrists write. The CEO of my company wrote an article about how Ozempic can actually, now they're studying it, how it can actually help with addiction. Like,
Mm.
so if you want to write something that has to do with mental health, substance use disorder, or anything related to any, even we've had parents that have lost children to fentanyl poisoning write articles. So SoberNotSubtle.com,
Yes.
I think it's a great resource. It's for people to tell their stories, and there's a whole bunch of other great information on there.
Awesome.
That would be one way you can find me, and on all the socials, Sober Not Subtle on all socials,
everywhere. Okay.
And the book, I happen to have one here because I got 2 boxes of them yesterday. It's called, in case, it's backwards now, but maybe it'll be forward.
No, it's perfect.
In Case of Emergency, Break Childhood is the name of the book. And right now you can still pre-order it on Amazon, but on Tuesday, the paperback and the ebook drop on Amazon, and then soon to follow BarnesandNoble.com and Apple Bookstore and all that stuff.
Right.
But if you're looking for it on Tuesday, you can buy it. And I'm nervous as shit, but excited just the same.
Congratulations. It's such a huge accomplishment. Such a huge accomplishment. And I love your writing. I love your humor. It was great. And I remember thinking, like, you first started out talking about, I was a nice guy. And it's so funny because I related so much to that, because I always felt like I was a really nice person.
Yeah.
You know, how did I end up this way? You know, doing drugs in the combat zone or whatever. I mean, So, it's a great story. Pick it up. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for listening to Leaving CrazyTown. We hope today's episode offered you valuable insights and tools to help navigate your relationship.
If you found our discussion helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. And share it with a friend. Misery loves company, right?
Stay connected with us on social media and visit our website for additional resources and updates on future episodes.
Until next time, remember that breaking free from codependency is a journey, and we're here to help you every step of the way. And hey, if all else fails, at least you'll have a few left.
So buckle up. We're leaving CrazyTown.